Hello, good day everyone. I am Princess Divine Panoga from Group 3. So before to tackle about our topic, I would just like to ask if you guys know this man below. So, since we are virtual, I cannot hear your response. So, if your answer is Abraham Maslow, you are correct. So, who is Abraham Maslow? So Abraham Maslow, born on April 1, 1908 in Manhattan, New York. He was the oldest among the seven children. Maslow's childhood was unhappy and lonely. He was shy, insecure, and often felt inferior. So he had a difficult relationship with his mother. But despite of all the loneliness he experienced, he found comfort in books and in studying. About for his education, Maslow initially studied law because his father wants to become him to be a lawyer. But then he quit law because upon studying it, it felt like it focused too much on the negative side of the people. So that's why he quit law. After quitting to the law school, he became interested in philosophy and in psychology. So he studied in the University of Wisconsin and earned his PhD degree in psychology in 1934. He worked with Harry Harlow and studied the dominance and the sexual behavior of or in monkeys. And later, he researched human motivation and behavior. One of his important influences was he learned from the psychologists such as Karen Horney, Alfred Adler, and Max Wethemer and Kurt Goldstein. He was also influenced by the anthropologist named Ruth Benedict. His experiences helped him understand that the people have common human needs and despite of the cultural differences. So we had our needs, human needs as a human, despite of our differences. Like for example, culture. So Maslow's main contribution was he became one of the major figures of humanistic psychology, and he focused on the positive side of human nature. He studied human growth, motivation, and potential. He also developed the idea of self-actualization, and he is known for the hierarchy of needs. Maslow taught in Brooklyn College and he became president of the American Psychological Association in 1967 to 1968. He died on June 8, 1970 at 62 years of age. He died from a heart attack. One of Maslow's best legacy was his ideas continues to influence psychology, education, business, counseling, and healthcare. He was remembered for emphasizing human potential and personal growth and also especially the self-actualization. Okay guys, so what I find most interesting about Maslow is that despite of having a difficult childhood, he becomes someone who focused in the positive side of human nature. His experiences may have influenced his desire to understand how people grow differently, develop, and reach their full potential. Okay, so let us move on to Maslow's holistic dynamic theory. So, what is Maslow's holistic dynamic theory? So, when we say holistic, it describes as a whole person. So, Maslow looks at the person as a whole. And dili lang bitaw tanawon ang behavior or the problem, or we say not just focusing in one negative side. So abi lang feelings, need, experiences, and relationships and goals. So dili siya bias. Then when we say dynamic, it is always changing. So our needs, motivation change over time. So example, if you are hungry and food is your priority, once you're full, you might focus on a safety, love, belonging, or achievement. So, ingani siya. How it works, we have here the basic needs, higher needs, and the self-actualization. So, speaking of, we have the hierarchy of needs. So, first, di ba, is physiological. So, ang physiological, na ang katong food, water, and sleep. Basic needs good. And the next followed by safety, also love and belonging and esteem before the highest hierarchy, which is the self-actualization, becoming the best version of yourself and reaching your potential. So, what is self-actualization for you? So, how do you define your self-actualization, no? So, when others say that if I become successful, if I become rich, if I become a billionaire, so each one of us have a different view or point of view of self-actualization. So we have here called the three forces. So why man three? So there were already three major approaches. So first force is called the psychoanalysis, which is focused on a lot on unconscious and conflicts and psychological problems. Second force is the behaviorism. So behaviorism is focused on the observance or observable behavior of how environment shapes us or shape it. And the third force is the humanistic psychology. Maslow focused on the positive side of people, their ability to grow, choose, and improve, and their potential. So it's not about like Maslow focusing on the negative side only, but he focused on the positive side of the people. So to give you a kind of generalized knowledge about the holistic dynamic theory, it is about looking on the whole person and understanding that people are constantly motivated by the different needs. So as a people, we work for it because we have motivation. For example, we studied a lot to become a dance lister, to become a Latin honor in the future, or else we graduate and have a decent work or a work that you are expecting. So that's why you're working hard on upon studying, 'di ba? So ingana siya. So we start with the basic needs like food and safety, then move toward love, esteem, and eventually self-actualization. So for Maslow, people are not only defined by their problems or behavior because they are also have the potential to grow and become the best version of themselves. So, di ba, positive kayo ang kang Maslow na side because he is not just defining a one person because of its problems or negativity or negative side, di ba? So, one of the example is when you got a low grade. So, grades doesn't define you according to Maslow. Maslow's holistic theory. So, it doesn't define you. It doesn't make you low also, di ba? So that's all about for Maslow's holistic dynamic theory. So I hope you learn from it and please do not define yourself as how negative your life is or how negative problems came into your life. So focus on the positive side according to Maslow's holistic dynamic theory. So I am giving the floor to the next reporter. Thank you.
Okay, so self-actualization by Maslow. So long story short, uh, he started conceptualizing self-actualization because he met two of his professors that were different from average people in a way that um, they differed in they represented themselves, or they represented the highest level of human development. So what exactly is this, right? So a good human being and the self-actualizing people in um, what Maslow called them, they were basically they differed from average people in the way that they were for four specific reasons. One is that they were free from psychopathology. Basically, they didn't have cognitive distortion, and the modern definition of uh, so a psychopathology is mental illness and disorder, right? But in this context, it specifically means that they were not they were not chronically frustrated, and they were not mentally, physically, and emotionally sick, and they didn't have failed or cognitive distortion, and that was all because they were able to progress through the hierarchy of needs of Maslow, and they embrace the B values, which I will be explaining later. Um, but the final criterion was specifically that what do you call this? In to quote Maslow, right? Wait, Right. To quote Maslow, it was the full use and exploitation of talents, capacities, and potentialities, etc. So basically, a self-actualizing individual fulfilled the needs to grow, develop, and reach their potential. So external verities, or B values, as Maslow called them, were what motivated um, self-actualizing people, as opposed to um, normal people who had regular motivation. They were um the B values were meta needs, right? Like they were beyond the hierarchy of needs. They were mostly psychological, and that led to meta motivation. So we have 14 B values. B meaning being values. So um oh my gosh, wait. Okay, so we have truth, goodness, beauty, wholeness, aliveness, uniqueness, perfection, completion, justice and order, simplicity, totality, effortlessness, humor, and autonomy. So a lot of these are very self-explanatory. Truth being able to see reality as it is, goodness being able to not only be good and act good, but also being able to value goodness, right? Um, Beauty is being able to value beauty in things that are not meant to be beautiful, for the or the essence, that being able to see beauty in everything, and not for because it makes us feel good, but specifically because it's just beautiful. Wholeness is being able to see that things work together to create something whole, right? And this differs from totality, because in a way that totality is being able to see the whole, right? So it's being able to see every single part of what is whole, and not just how they, um, not just wholeness, wherein you see how they work together, right? So aliveness is basically presence of mind, being in the present and not just being physically there, is actually living fully. Uniqueness is being able to accept and recognize that you are different. You are different from others. Others are different from you. You all have unique traits. It's not just recognizing, but also accepting the differences. Perfection is not specifically flawlessness. Is not just flawlessness, but it also means being able to use your potential or your skills um, fully, or like learning more, even though you already know the most, or putting more effort even though you're already the best performer, or it's basically being able to ask yourself, how can you maximize your potential, even though like you might already be the standard of perfect, right? Justice and order is basically recognizing recognizing the need and valuing that, like fairness, equality, um, through means of structure and organization. Simplicity, basically, it's just being able to value what is natural, straightforward, and without overcomplicating things. Totality, already explained. Effortlessness is being able to just let things go smoothly on its own with minimal effort. It's being able to achieve an outcome without putting much effort, and it's basically going with the flow, right? Humor is Maslow actually describes how humor between self-actualizing versus non-self-actualizing people are differ. Humor and self-actualizing people is being able to find humor and create humor that is, or to be humorous in a way that is not at the expense of others, for example with insulting jokes. Autonomy of very self-explanatory, it's being able to choose for yourself and make decisions without the seeking the assurance and validation of others. So the when you have these values, you have specific characteristics. They all play together to become to make a person self-actualizing. So these are the characteristics of self-actualizing people. So we have 15. The first, um, self-actualizing people have a more efficient perception of reality. Um, they have an acceptance of self, others, and nature. Spontaneity, simplicity, and naturalness. Problem centering, the need for privacy. Autonomy, continued freshness of appreciation. The peak experience, Gemeinschafts Gemeinschaftsgefühl, profound interpersonal relations, the democratic character structure, discrimination between means and ends, philosophical sense of humor, creativeness, resistance to enculturation. So, each of these have like many different, like all of these like values, like and play together, right? So more efficient perception of reality. It's basically, um, like it has to do with truth, right? So it's like when you're able to see the truth, you see reality as it is. So it's so much more easier for you to tell like to recognize the distinction between what can be real or what can be fake, what can be plastic, what can be and versus what can be sincere, because you see, self-actualizing people tend to be more genuine people as well, and they tend to see the world, um, like the way it is, or in a way that is not the way they wish it were, right? So, um, acceptance of others, self, others, and nature, very self-explanatory. It also has to do a lot with uniqueness, and beauty. It's and it's just being able to, yeah, as I explained earlier, some spontaneity, simplicity, and naturalness. It's yeah. So spontaneity has to do with, for example, uniqueness or aliveness, or effortlessness specifically. It can be so spontaneity, right? Effortlessness and simplicity and naturalness is obviously that's where is it? No, that's simplicity, right? So it's basically effortless simplicity, right? So it's self-actualizing people can achieve outcomes with minimal efforts, right? Like for example, by being themselves. For example, in a conversation, you are your natural self because you do not need to it's like in a conversation with other people, you are your natural self. You don't need to put in too much effort to create a false image in order to impress other people, right? Um, and problem centering, it's self-actualizing people tend to recognize that there are problems beyond your internal, right? Like there are actual other problems that matter beyond like your internal problems or issues, right? So it's being able to see what matters beyond yourself. It's being able to decenter yourself, right? um and also not just like recognizing the problem, but also working towards the problem, or like solving the problem and stuff. The need for privacy, it's not necessarily just for privacy, but it's more like you're able to have privacy without um a discomfort, right? So it's basically the saying that um like you can be comfortable, like I can be alone without feeling alone, right? Next is autonomy, very self-explanatory. Continued freshness for appreciation, also very self-explanatory. It's being able to appreciate the essence of things. Peak experience is some Maslow describes this as like a kind of in the simplest way to put it is it's like a state of mind wherein we experience wherein we experience like a very strong connection to reality, wherein we are where we experience like humility, love, appreciation for beauty, etc. Gemeinschaftsgefühl is basically just it's just a sense of community, and um yeah, it's it has to do with justice and order. It's being able to yeah, like being kind to strangers or being good to strangers even though they're strangers, right? It's yeah. So profound interpersonal relations, self actualizing people tend to have less friends, but the friends that they do have are they are very deeply connected to, and they are very deeply close to, and because of this they tend to be more misunderstood, and like maybe they might be more standoffish, especially yeah. And the next is the democratic character structure, very self-explanatory as well. It also relates to um, Gemeinschaftsgefühl, wherein yeah, democracy, right? Equality for all. You understand. Self-actualizing people tend to understand that and also exercise fairness, right, equality for everyone, despite of their race, their socioeconomic status, etc. um, Discrimination between means and ends, it's being able to um, it's being able to appreciate, like, yeah, it's being able to tell the difference between the means and the ends, the process and the thing that you're actually, the outcome, or like like, it's not necessary, it's not so much that it is like the process versus the outcome. It's more like like what you're doing versus what you're doing it for, right? So for example, if you're eating, the means of your eating may be, maybe that, like, to, for example, sustain yourself or for hunger, right? um or like to end your hunger. And so, it's like self-actualizing people in this situation can, they eat for the sake of eating. They appreciate the eating for the sake of eating, and not necessarily because it leads to something else, or it ends the task. It's similar to completion. I don't remember if I explained completion, but completion is basically, it's it's completing something for the sake of completing, and not because it leads you to somewhere else, or it gives you an outcome. Not for the outcome, um not for the what comes after that outcome, not for the reward as well. It's completing for the sake of completing, for the sake of fulfillment, right? um so philosophical sense of humor, very self-explanatory as well. As I said earlier, um making jokes, self-actualizing people tend to, um like, they don't go for, like, when they are being humorous, they don't go for bigger laughs, and so they don't need a bigger punchline, right? So it's, yeah. Creativeness is basically being creative in all things that you do. Resistance to enculturation is basically not being influenced by others so easily, and being able to, stand your, like, ground morally, ethically, and anything else. So yeah, so all of these, they also lead to a distinct kind of love, when for from self-actualizing people, right? Because we have, so basically we have D love and B love. D love being a deficiency love, which is what average people usually have, and it's basically loving for the sake of something, expecting something in return, right? So it's like, I love you because of what you give me, I love you because of what you can do for me, and it's not and it differentiates from be love, or being love, which is what self-actualizing people, in a way that, it does, it doesn't, it's like, I love you for the way you are, right? Like, I love you because of your essence as a person, right? And not because of what you give me, or like how you make me feel, but because, for the sake of loving you, right? So, basically, self-actualizing people are able to love, and to receive and give love, um, like, without expecting, like, mutuality, and they're able to, find motivation beyond, like, material motivation, right? And in things, like, in growing and developing and reaching their potential, um like, like, their motivation is the essence of things, and not necessarily like the physical manifestation of things. So yeah.
Good day, everyone. My name is Sofia Fatima Jake Samasho, and I am here to tackle about Maslow's philosophy of science. Okay. First of all, I will ask, what do you think Maslow believed in us psychologists? Well, in fact, he believed on a humanistic and holistic approach. Maslow believed science should not be completely value free. Psychology should consider human values, emotions, and experiences and study the whole person rather than isolated behaviors or characteristics. For example, Maslow was motivated to search for self actualizing people because he idolized and greatly admired Max Wertheimer and Ruth Benedict, his two original models for self actualization. But he also expressed affection and admiration for Abraham Lincoln, Eleanor Roosevelt, and other self actualizing people. He emphasized studying individual people and giving importance to their subjective experiences. People should be allowed to describe their experiences in their own way. Maslow believed that we should also put emotions and affection into our study, and not just out of obligation or any other thing. And due to him attending medical school, he was shocked by the impersonal attitude of surgeons who nonchalantly tossed recently removed body parts onto a table. And because of such a cold and callous procedure, it led Maslow to originate the concept of desacralization. This refers to science becoming cold, emotionless, and disconnected from wonder, joy, and awe. Maslow criticized this approach because he believed science should not lose its human meaning. Instead, Maslow believed that psychologists or scientists should be recycling. It means bringing values, creativity, emotions, wonder, and awe back into science. Scientists should not only study their subjects, but also have appreciation and fascination for what they study. For example, astronomers who study stars, they should not just be only studying them, but be awestruck by them. He believed that psychologists must not only study human personality, they must do so with excitement, enjoyment, wonder, and affection. Maslow also encouraged a certain attitude, atomistic attitude, a non-interfering, passive, and receptive approach to psychology. Instead of always trying to predict and control people, psychologists should be open to mystery, discovery, and human growth. This means that researchers should be non-interfering, avoid unnecessarily controlling what they study, instead of forcing or manipulating subjects. Atomistic attitude means asking rather than telling. Maslow believed that we must trust human beings to be autonomous, self-governing, and self-choosing. It is also passive. Taoistic is passive. It allows things to reveal themselves rather than forcing conclusions. Receptive. Remain open to unexpected discoveries. And observant. To pay attention to what naturally emerges. Maslow also questioned whether prediction and control should always be the primary goal of psychology. Instead, he emphasized understanding, fascination, and human growth. Because he said that the proper response to mystery is not analysis but awe. Maslow also believed that there is the role of the scientist, of the psychologists. According to Maslow, psychologists themselves should possess certain qualities. They should be psychologically healthy, tolerate uncertainty and ambiguity, be intuitive and insightful, have courage to explore difficult questions, be willing to question their own methods, be willing to make mistakes while exploring important problems. I also believe in it is better to explore an important question imperfectly than to perform technically perfect research on something unimportant. In his research methods, Maslow reflected his philosophy. His approach generally involved intuition, then observation, then hypothesis or hunch, then verification. He often began with an intuitive idea or hunch. He then attempted to investigate whether the idea was supported by evidence. Maslow's approach to research method is intuition, and then iyan ang obserbahan ang iyang ibang experiment, the people, the behavior. Then he would create a hypothesis, a hunch, and then finally he would verify it by using eligible evidence, supported evidence. Maslow also used ethnographic methods. It is focusing on individual people rather than generalizing immediately from large groups. He first focuses on specific people, certain like 3 people per group, then move to large groups, a big population. Then he uses subjective methods, considering people's own descriptions of their experiences. Subjective experiences of people he is observing. And then holistic approaches, it is examining people as complete individuals. This approach helped him study self-actualizing people and peak experiences. Now we move on to measuring self-actualization. There is this thing called personal orientation inventory, or POI. It is developed by Everett L. Shostrom to measure the values and behaviors associated with self-actualization. This contains 150 choice items. The respondents choose between two statements that reflect different attitudes or behaviors. Higher scores generally indicate greater self-actualization. Low scores do not necessarily mean mental illness. They may simply indicate fewer self-actualizing values or behaviors. So in POI, if you get a higher score, it means you have a great self-actualization. It means that you know yourself, you see yourself. But if you have a low score, it doesn't mean that you have a mental illness. No, that is a misconception. It means that you only indicate a little about yourself, a little about your values and your behaviors. There are two major scales of the PLI. The first is the time competence. Second is the time competence. This measures whether a person is mainly present-oriented and able to live effectively in the present. This ties the past and future meaningfully to the current moment rather than getting stuck in them. This is living in the present, not in the past, not in the future. Present. This understands that the past informs and the future is planned, but life is lived now. This relies on internal resources to handle current realities efficiently. With a higher self-actualization, this correlates with the psychology of maturity, spontaneity, and emotional health. And then, and then time and confidence, it dwells excessively on past regrets, guilts, or anxieties, or overly differs living to any idealized future. It is a disconnection. It is a disconnection from the present and the future. For example, a person is living in their life regrettably because they dwell on their past more often and they overthink over their future, but they do not live in their present. They struggle to experience the present meaningfully. It is anxiety driven. It often feels helpless, fearful of what is next, or burdened by old mistakes. Time confidence has a lower self actualization. It reflects a higher reliance on external approval and lower psychological adjustment. There are 10 POI subscales. The subscales examine important characteristics of self-actualizing people, this including self-actualizing values, flexibility in applying values, awareness of one's needs and feelings, spontaneous expression of feelings, self-regard, self-acceptance, positive view of humanity, ability to see opposing aspects of life as related, acceptance of aggression, and, lastly, capacity for intimate relationships. Only a reminder that POI is relatively difficult to fake because characteristics of self actualization do not always match what society considers socially desirable. For example, a person trying to look good may actually score lower because self actualizing people are often independent of social expectations and resistant to enculturation. This means that if naisip ng tao nga, taas ang iyang self-actualization, they would not depend on the social expectations of others. Instead, they would depend on their own. They're independent. They're they are resistant to enculturation. The next, under the POI, we have the Short Index of Self-Actualization, or CISA. It is a self-report measure used to evaluate an individual's degree of self-actualization tendencies. It is created by Alvin Jones and Ray Crandall to solve two problems with the POI. It was too long, and its forced-choice format could frustrate respondents. That was also the problem with the POI. It was too long for the respondents to answer. So, Alvin Jones and Ray Crandall made CISA, a short index of self-actualization. It uses 15 items from the POI, and it uses a 6-point Likert scale from strongly disagree to strongly agree. It is designed to provide a shorter measure of self-actualization. CISA is much easier than the whole POI. There is another index under the POI, which is the Brief Index of Self-Actualization, is developed by John Summerlin and Charles Bundrick. It measures four major aspects: core self-actualization, using one's full potential; number two, autonomy, independence and self-direction; number three, openness to experience, being receptive to experiences and other people's needs; and number four, comfort with solitude, being comfortable spending time alone.
Hello everyone, so I'll be discussing the Jonah complex and psychotherapy. So let's start with the Jonah complex. According to Maslow, this is the fear of being our best or hadlok na ma-reach atong full potential. Before I explain further, I want you to think about this. Have you ever experienced a time nga kaya ba mo sa inyong kaugalingon nga makaya ninyo ni but you still held yourself back? Maybe because you're scared to fail or ma-judge or baka dili nimo ma-meet ang expectations. If yes, that's actually related to the idea of the Jonah complex. Because we have this natural tendency nga to grow and become better. Minsan, kita ra po mismo ang mo-hold back sa atong kaugalingon. This can prevent a person from achieving self-actualization. And because of this fear, it can prevent us from reaching self-actualization, which is the highest level in Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So, even if naatay potential, dili na to siya fully develop because we're stopping ourselves from trying or improving. What's interesting about the Jonah complex is that it's not only about fear of failure, but it can also be fear of success or greatness. For example, imagine na ay opportunity na mahimo kang really good at something. Instead of ma-excite ka kay nahunaunaan ni mo nga, what if maging successful ako? Then mutaas na po dilang expectations na ako after. So sometimes we actually want success but we're also scared of what comes with it. Another part is self-doubt and false humility. For example, naay ni compliment nimo and said nga, "Wow, nice ni mo more report oy." Pero instead nga dawaton nimo ang compliment, niingon ka nga, "Ay, di uy chambar ato." Of course, being humble is good. Pero if kanunay ran na to itaw atong kaugalingon, even though capable ta, it can prevent us from recognizing our own potential. Because of this fear and self-doubt, we might also start avoiding opportunities for growth. For example, naay opportunity to volunteer or to try something new, but you didn't accept it or gibuhat kay gihunahan na nimo nga tas hindi nimo kayanon. Because of avoiding it, nawala rin yung chance to learn, to improve, and discover what you're actually capable of. This also connects to the idea of who am I to be great? For example, kung mag-compare ta sa mga successful nga people, basin makahuna-una ta nga sila gani successful per ako, kaya ba na mahimong ingana? So instead nga i-pursue nato atong goals, ato na lang i-lower ang expectations nato sa atong self. And according to Maslow, almost everyone experience some form of this fear. So basically, the Jonah complex shows us nga sometimes dili tungod nga kay wala tay ability, sometimes our own fear and self-doubt ang makapugong nato from reaching our potential. Now, let's move on to psychotherapy. According to Maslow, ang goal sa psychotherapy is to help clients move towards self-actualization. So, dili lang siya about solving a person's problem, but also helping them to grow and eventually reach their potential. One part of this helping clients embrace what Maslow called being values or be values. This includes values like truth, justice, goodness, and simplicity. Basically, these values help guide a person towards becoming a more fulfilled and self-actualized individual. Maslow also believed na clients should also become free from unhealthy dependency on others. For example, if always nato need nga na ay approval from other people to feel good about ourselves, then maglisod ta nga mahimong independent. Through therapy, a person can develop their own confidence and sense of self-worth instead of always relying on others' people approval. Psychotherapy also encourages personal growth. So instead nga puro lang, what's wrong with me? It can also help a person ask, unsaon na ako pag-grow and mahimong healthier and more fulfilled nga person. According to Maslow, many people who seek therapy already have their basic needs relatively satisfied, pero they may still struggle with love, belongingness, confidence, or self-worth. And I think something ni nga dali ra nato ma-relate. Bisan okay man atong basic needs, possible gihapon nga usahay maka-feel ta nga dil ta belong or dil ta good enough. That's why important kayo ang relationship between the therapist and the client. Imagine nga, nag-open up ka about something personal pero judgmental imong therapist. Would you feel comfortable opening up again? Probably not, diba? So for Maslow, the therapist should provide a warm, loving, and accepting relationship. This helps the client feel accepted and worthy of love. And through that healthy relationship, the client can develop more confidence and self-worth. Eventually, makatabang po ni sa client nga makahimo og healthier relationship outside therapy.